Welcome back to Hardware Unboxed for part 2 of the December Q&A, which I think you labelled the Christmas edition.
It's got to be.
But it's probably now...
Oh, you want the New Year's edition, do you?
The New Year's edition? I'm not sure when these are going out, to be honest, but...
We'll fight about this off camera.
The Christmas/New Year/holiday season/Boxing Day/ I don't know, whatever edition. So yeah, part 1 is up on the channel, so check out that for the rest of the questions that we've been answering, and we'll get into part 2, but before we do...
Today's sponsor spot is brought to you by Thermal Grizzly and their new 12th Gen CPU contact frame by deBauer. It's well known that the integrated loading mechanism, or ILM, of the LJ1700 sockets bends 12th Gen CPUs, leading to an uneven contact surface that reduces cooling performance. Solving this issue, the contact frame replaces the ILM, allowing for a much more even contact with the CPU's IHS and the base of your cooler, which in turn reduces operating temperatures. Installation's quick and easy, and thanks to the use of anodized aluminium, the contact frame is non-conductive. And then, for those of you who wish to further maximize contact, Thermal Grizzly now offers an optional lapping tool, so for more information, please check the link in the video description. Alright, would you consider doing some idle power consumption / low load testing for CPUs and GPUs, given the high electricity prices currently in the world? So, idle CPU and GPU stuff we generally include in our reviews, just like idle system usage. As for low load tests, we don't really do mixed workload power consumption. It's usually just load consumption and then idle consumption. As for rising power costs and all that sort of stuff, I guess when we're reviewing like an RTX 4090 or a 4080 or a 7100 XTX, I feel like if you're buying those products, how much your power bill is going to increase. I don't really know how to put this, but your priorities probably aren't straight. Like, if you're concerned about the price of your power bill and how much power your computer's using, you would probably be buying low-end hardware. So that would be more for like a low-powered discussion. Would that make sense?
Yeah, because I mean, if you're spending over $1,000 on a GPU,
that's sort of what
probably going to be better off, I guess. So yeah, I think that makes sense. I found some of your testing of like power, frame capped performance to be interesting, where you limit a game to 90 FPS, you see which GPU runs that more efficiently, because certainly you don't want these bits of hardware just wasting power if they're being run in sort of 50-60% utilization. But yeah, I mean, I think it is very tier dependent, and again, it's just, as we've talked about in the past with power consumption, it's one of those things where it's kind of a feature that you talk about. It may be a separating factor if two products are very close, but historically what we've seen is that most people want the higher performing product, and power consumption tends to be, less of a concern. And again, it does depend heavily on your region as well as to how terrible power prices are. So yeah, obviously it's not great that some people have expensive electricity these days. Ideally, everyone would have access to affordable power, but yeah, for certainly these high-end products that we've been seeing lately, the ones where the power consumption is getting pretty high and pretty crazy for some workloads, yeah, again, if you're spending, $2,000-$3,000 on your total system, then you could probably afford the power bills, I'd say, most of the time.
Yeah, or you just get the cheaper hardware, which saves you money on both ends, really, doesn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, what's the review conclusion you've made that you've come to regret the most after a few months, either by being too positive or too negative?
Good question.
Yeah, I can't think of anything over the last few months, but one that I don't know if I guess I regret it just because I could have emphasized it more, evidently, would be my 7900 XT review, which was like a week ago. So not months, but it's fresh in my mind, Tim. All right, I can't. God, what has happened in the last few months? Honestly, it's been a whirlwind. What happened? I don't even know. All I've done is just been reviewing stuff back to back to back to back. I don't even know what happened when. But the 700 XT review, not that I don't think I was too critical or too positive. I think I should have emphasized more that I think why these products suck is because the competition product kind of sucks, as in the RTX 4080 is not good value. So when I say, there's no point buying the 700 XT because you just buy the XTX. But if you're going to spend $1,000 on the XTX for $200 more, the RTX 4080, in my opinion, is technically a superior product and almost every possible way. So you would buy that. But I'm not saying my buying advice is buy an RTX 4080, because I'm saying the RTX 4080 is garbage value, which is why I'm not that impressed with the Radeon GPUs.
Yeah. So you're kind of like not recommending anything.
Yeah, that's right. But I'm just saying, if you were going to do something, it's like, if you get yourself up to $1,000 and you're like, oh, I'm going to buy this for $1,000, but then, you know, if you care about ray tracing or DLSS or any of the other features you get, you know, it's kind of worth it. Like, I'm not saying it's absolutely worth it, but that's the point where you're like, well, you know, you probably, or maybe do that. Which basically what I'm trying to say is that doesn't make the 7100 XTX great value if you're tossing up, if there's a better product. That's,
yeah, if you're tossing up between XTX and 4080,
yeah,
you're like, yeah, but then the 4080 is bad value, then the XTX isn't great either.
That's, yeah.
Which I guess is
so. I'm not automatically saying, because I don't think the 700 XTX is great value, therefore I think the RTX 4080 is great value. I'm saying the RTX
opposite.
Yeah, I'm saying the opposite. So I think, because I saw quite a few comments of people saying, oh my God, I can't believe your advice here is buy a 4080. I'm like, that's not my advice. I said in the review, the 4080 sucks, but I guess I should have really emphasized that I'm not recommending any of these products. I'm just sort of hypothetically saying, if you were to buy that, then you might as well buy that, but they all kind of suck.
Yeah.
So that's the only thing I would have changed there, is just really emphasize the fact that I think they all suck.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Yeah, I think, yeah, just thinking back over the years, there's definitely been some times when, yeah, I guess I haven't like worded the conclusions super well and sort of emphasizing certain things over other things. Because when you're making a video, you always think, oh, everyone's going to get what I'm saying here, right? And then you see the audience reaction, it tends to be a bit different. I think, for example, something like the FSR1 video, I think it probably should have made it clearer that FSR1 isn't very effective at lower resolutions. I think that was only part of the video, but, you know, obviously the focus of that was 4K testing, where FSR1 is, you know, can be okay depending on the situation. But I should have, in that video, made it more clear that, hey, if you're using this at like those lower resolutions that a lot of people play games at, it's not very effective. And so, you know, but those are sort of, you know, often, I think with FSR1, the first video, we had one game to test with as well, which kind of makes those sorts of things, you know, it's difficult to draw conclusions when you've got such a small sample size as well. So those are things that, like, if you were doing a revisit later, that's, you know, you sort of adjust what happens from there, sort of adjust expectations and things like that. I think there's been some, you know, monitors I've tested that, you know, either I haven't found flaws, for example, like the Odyssey Neo G9, for example. You don't spot the flaws, so then your conclusion is kind of wrong about the product because, you know, deal breakers you didn't talk about. So those are the sorts of things that, you know, you kind of regret and sort of think, oh, I could have tested that better or done a more thorough investigation, or, you know, adjusted the conclusion for that sort of, you know, it's more representative of what people are actually experiencing. I think there's been a few of those over the years, but, you know, I don't think there's ever been something that I've been too negative on that I wish I was more positive about. I think usually if I destroy something, it's probably warranted.
Yeah, like,
because those are always pretty well considered, the negative stuff, because you have to really think about it, because, you know, you're going to get blowback and
well, the negative stuff we had to say about RDNA 3, I don't take any of that back, so stand by it.
Yeah.
All right, and once again, I will apologize for my voice being a bit hoarse. It's not much we can do. I don't feel sick, but clearly there's something a bit off, but I've been struggling with it for over a week now. Anyway, Tim's putting up with me, so you guys can as well. What are your guys' opinion on Ryzen 7000 PBO/Curve Optimizer? Would you be happy to run the chips at stock bar settings, or would you limit the PPT/temps and play with Curve Optimizer? P.S. You guys are my number one source of tech media. Merry Christmas to the Hammer Box team and Other Side Up UK. Oh, from the Other Side Up UK, sorry. Yes, well, thank you for all of that. I would probably recommend, if you had a Ryzen 7000 CPU and you wanted it to run a bit cooler and potentially a bit better, start playing with the... it's a tough one, whether you'd leave it stock or not. I guess it's like, are you interested in overclocking? Are you interested in improving the out-of-the-box performance? I guess that's the best way to put that question. So do you want to tinker with it? Do you want to risk stability? Do you want the headache of it maybe crashing, resetting? Do you want to put in the time and effort to improve and tune your system? I guess if the answer is yes, then I would start by probably looking at like undervolting, curve optimizer, all of those tuning things and see where you get. But you're going to have to put a fair bit of time and effort into actually validating whether it's stable or not. Depending on how critical stability is to you. If it doesn't really matter if it crashes here and there, then you don't have to go too crazy with that, because if it crashes, it's not too much of an inconvenience. You really are after reducing temperatures, power consumption, and improving performance. But if having your system crash late game or something would be devastating to you, then I'd personally leave it stock, which is why I leave mine stock, because there's nothing worse than being in an... If we're talking about gaming, there's nothing worse than being in an awesome multiplayer game or something and really enjoying it and then having a system crash. Like, yeah, that's crushing. And likewise, if you're doing some professional level work or something and you've been working for a while and your system crashes, that also sucks. So I guess that's the easiest way to answer that one. If you're willing to take on the challenge of tuning and tweaking and you don't mind a bit of a stability hiccup here and there, then go for it, because there can be some decent results to be had. Could you do a follow-up test of the 7900 XTX but with an AIB model plus undervolted / overclocked and do another value comparison? There's no really good video of that out yet, and I would think that's interesting. Yeah, I mean, it would be to a degree. You'd sort of want to do the same thing with like an RTX 4080, I suppose, to get sort of an apples to apples overclock comparison, but then it's an apples to apples comparison of a sample size of 1. So if you get a particularly good Radeon card and then a really bad GeForce card, it's probably a bit skewed. But from the testing I've done and the testing I've seen from trusted overclockers, it looks like you're getting generally like 8% more performance, 10% more performance out of a 7900 XTX. So the AIB cards really aren't that much better, and you can probably squeeze close to that out of the reference card anyway. Not that I've tried, but regardless, the AIB cards look like they have, let's say, 10% overclocking headroom, which is generally what you get out of pretty much any graphics card. So people are acting like, they're overclocking to the tune of 20%, like a 980 Ti or something, but I don't think that's the case at all. There may be a rare scenario where... I'm not even sure that's the case at all. I'll just leave it at that, because I have not seen it. But I've seen some people showing gains that high, but I've not been able to replicate them. I think maybe that was, I don't know.
Maybe just one specific game, or
maybe, or there was just an issue with the testing. I'm not sure. Not sure on that one, but from the guys I'd trust to do the overclocking, they're showing like 8 to 10% performance uplift.
And this comes up every GPU
it does.
launch. Every single GPU launch, it's always how does overclocking go? How does undervolting go? Yeah. Can I make this card overclock it and get up to the next tier of performance?
It's worse for Radeon GPUs all the time.
It's always like, if you could overclock one card to reach the next card, then you could just overclock that next tier up card and get even more performance. And then again, if 20% overclocks or even 15% overclocks were possible regularly with these models, then these days, they would be shipping that.
Mate, it's, as you say, it's the same story. I remember when Vega 56 and 64 came out, and my reviews weren't particularly positive. Then people came out and R/AMD said you can undervolt it, you get 20% more performance. Looked into it, not the case. There's a lot of backlash our way for that content. And then months went by, and sure enough, more and more people bought them. And it's like, you could improve performance a little bit, but you can do that with any GPU. There was no miracle cure for Vega.
The days of massive overclocking / undervolting, which is effectively overclocking, delivering these super impressive gains is just... Companies don't want to leave performance on the table, so they don't.
I think people are looking at the frequencies at which they're hitting for whatever period of time and extrapolating that that's the gain they're going to get. But then when you actually do the gaming benchmarks, it's 8%. So I'll definitely look into it and make sure that's the case. We haven't done any content on that yet. It's definitely in the works, and I've done, as I said, some preliminary testing. But I don't think these AIB cards are going to change what we have to say about the 700 XTX. I think it's just typical partner cards.
I have a 1.5 meter by 0.75 meter desk and it's always dusty and cluttered. How do you, Steve and Tim, keep your gigantic desks clean, tidy and organized without dust? Do you have a hidden third member, or the dust in Australia falls to the ceiling and you just need to move the things? Yeah, all right. So what's the situation?
It's not a third. You just have to get yourself a wife. No, I'm kidding. Actually, even better than that. Oh man, if she watches this, I'm in so much trouble. You can get these attachments for your vacuum. So we're now doing. We did Windex and microfiber cloth. So this is kind of a cleaning special. I don't know where this is going to end up in the 3-part series, but this is a vacuum head. See if vacuum connects there. And it's got some brushes, and you just do that, and it sucks up all the dust, and you just go like very quick and easy. You can do like this whole desk in about 10 seconds, 20 if you're a bit slow like Tim. So that one's a good one. This is one of my favorites. I like the brush. This is the simple stock one that gets in that's good for even computer cases and stuff like that. Yep. So the brush head, and here's a different shape one.
Did you ever think that you'd be showing off vacuum cleaner heads on this channel?
Actually, I'm surprised we haven't done it sooner. So yes, yeah. So yeah, there you go. Different accessories. You can get them off places like eBay or your vacuum stores or whatever. They're not terribly expensive. Whack them on your vacuum and...
A nice handheld battery-powered vacuum cleaner.
I was going to do the Dyson advertisement. I've got a V11 and a V8. Just not flexing, but, you know.
I've only got the Xiaomi ones, which I think is still...
But they're actually not that good for using those, so I've got a standard more... They're good because you can get in the car and do all that stuff, and they're good for the desks and all that, so...
Yeah, I mean, keeping it clutter-free, like, obviously you can't just vacuum up your clutter. That's not...
I mean, you can.
You can. It's not... Don't vacuum up your wallet and stuff.
Well...
You have a fun time fishing it out. That's more just like a, part of your everyday, working or being at your desk is just, keeping things tidy and organized. Yeah. It's kind of just a mindset type thing. Like,
yeah, you can get drawers and things that help and shelves and stuff. But
I think you either are or you aren't an organized person in that sense. Like, I don't think there's anything wrong with having heaps of clutter on a desk.
You can learn organization though.
Yeah, I mean, you can. But
it's a learnt skill.
Yeah.
It is.
You can, but I think people either want to do it or don't want to do it.
Sure.
And so...
No, but seriously, go buy one of these. Get yourself some drawers. Just
get some drawers, yeah.
It's a Harbour Unboxed way.
Yep.
All right, let's move on to our next tip. All right, Tim. Actually, this is probably more me, this first part. Please add updated to Unreal Engine 5.1 Fortnite to GPU's test. So updated Fortnite testing, please. Yep. Which uses software ray tracing Lumen instead of hardware ray tracing RTX. It'd be interesting to see the difference between AMD and NVIDIA in this comparison. And then I guess the next sort of part of this question is, what do you think can Lumen completely replace RTX in the future? So do you think Lumen can replace RTX? A bit of an interesting question there, which I'll probably... So as for the Fortnite Unreal Engine 5.1 stuff, Fortnite sucks for benchmarking. Best way I can put it. And it sucks because the game is kind of good, and Fortnite haters are going to hate that. But I mean, it's good in the sense that Epic Games constantly updates Fortnite. So every few weeks, the game is radically changed. Chances are the part of the map you were testing on is quite different. Every few chapters, as we've seen with the Unreal Engine 5.1, they radically overhaul the game. So a game like Shadow of the Tomb Raider, which hasn't seen an update, or at least an update that affects performance in years, that's really good for GPU testing in that sense, which is why you'll see a lot of media outlets still using it. But Fortnite, the best way to test Fortnite is to use the replay feature, at least for GPU testing. And the problem is every single week they have an update at night, and that breaks all of the replays that came before that. So your replay is good for testing for maybe 1 week. Sometimes it's a matter of days. So that's not good, which basically means your data is valid for comparison for 1 week. So I use Fortnite in our big 50 game, 30 game, 40 game benchmarks because that data is all fresh, and then I throw it away and we do it all over again with new drivers and different GPUs and whatnot. So it's perfectly acceptable for that, but for ongoing testing, Fortnite is a nightmare, which is why nobody does it. Yeah, it's disappointing because it is such a good showcase, but...
Yeah, I think the second part of this question, there's a bit of a misconception about Unreal Engine 5 Lumen and versus RTX. Obviously, there's kind of, what's the best way to put it? Like different brand names for sort of doing a similar style of technology.
Sure.
So, RTX is just a brand name for NVIDIA's techniques for ray tracing on their hardware. And Lumen is effectively the brand name that Epic uses for Unreal Engine ray tracing.
Yeah, DXR and
so DXR, obviously, that is the DirectX, API. So you're kind of conflating all the APIs and software technologies and stuff. Lumen can still be hardware accelerated. So it's not just a software solution. It has a software path for, cards that don't support hardware acceleration. But if you do have a GPU that does support hardware acceleration, you're going to see much better performance. So, yeah, talking about like, will Lumen replace RTX? Well, I don't think it's kind of hard to say that that's a comparison really, because games running Lumen ray tracing in Unreal Engine 5 and 5.1 or whatever are still going to run on RTX hardware,
I guess you could see
cores.
you can see the RTX branding sort of disappearing from games as we move forward, but that doesn't mean that actual feature's gone, is what you're saying.
Yeah, that's right. And it doesn't mean that Nvidia won't have a performance advantage either, because it does, games like Spider-Man, for example, don't use, as far as I'm aware, RTX branding. It's still, because they were developed on console first, so they're not developing
Just
RTX.
real-time ray tracing hardware.
Yeah, whereas that game certainly still runs better for ray tracing on NVIDIA GPUs than AMD. So, yeah, I'm keen to see Lumen in more games, but I think fundamentally you're going to see pretty similar sort of ray tracing experience to all the other engines that have integrated, NVIDIA's specific RTX plugins that they've developed, so their techniques for ray tracing, compared to other games like we've just been talking about, Spider-Man, those sorts of games that have been developed with consoles in mind first. I think it's going to be pretty similar, but I'm still very keen to sort of see, this sort of next generation technologies from Unreal Engine 5 come, more to fruition. Personally, I'm more excited about Nanite. I reckon that looks super cool because it's kind of something we haven't seen.
Nanite is very cool.
Yeah, we haven't seen game engines really tackle something like, super far LODs.
Well, see, nanites are actually very cool because I use them in Fortnite.
Yeah,
it's very cool, but lumens I don't use because it makes it very hard to see indoors, and then the bloom effect you sort of get looking outside is hard to see players. So while there are some instances where it will highlight the player better, in most cases it makes it harder to see enemy players, which is no good for multiplayer games if you want to actually play the multiplayer game and kind of win the multiplayer game.
Yeah,
so.
But I imagine Nanite is giving you the ability to scale the LODs much further so you can see people's builds or...
Yes, you definitely can, but
further.
The other thing as well, just pop-in detail and stuff as well, like not complete pop-ins, but even just detail pop-ins, like that, not having that while you're flying around, it's a weird feeling, being able to go anywhere and not have that.
I remember you were talking about Assassin's Creed just before, and that's one of the games that has a notoriously bad pop-in, and that's why I'm kind of really keen on those sort of things. I sort of... Maybe lighting has become really good with rasterization, and obviously ray tracing has taken that to the next level.
That's so true.
But, in games like Assassin's Creed and Cyberpunk, you play without ray tracing. I mean, Assassin's Creed doesn't even have ray tracing, but you play those games without ray tracing, like, it looks pretty good. You turn on to ray tracing, like some games like Cyberpunk, you're like, whoa, that looks really good. But then you play Assassin's Creed and you see the pop-in and stuff, and you're like, that's pretty ugly pop-in. And if there's, that's why I'm very excited about Nanite, is the ability to cut down on that, increase the level of detail. And when you combine that with ray tracing, I think we're going to see some really big steps in overall visual quality. It's the pairing of those two things it's going to take. You can't just have one or the other. I think
if you said to me, what would you rather change with games? Would you rather eliminate pop-in, or would you rather have more realistic reflections?
I'd choose to eliminate pop-in
That's
first.
what I would choose for sure. I'm not saying that we shouldn't... I'm not trying to downplay the importance of ray tracing, but that's why I'm personally more excited about that particular feature, because that is what I would also prioritize as being... It's much more immersive and a much more enjoyable and realistic gaming experience when you don't have things just popping in. Some games do it at very close render distances, and it's very jarring.
See, I think we've seen from some of the latest games that, they've sort of added ray tracing to older titles like Portal or Quake 2, or obviously most recently The Witcher is another example. And even some other games like, I've just been, well, not recently, but I played Dying Light 2, which has ray tracing. The lighting effects look really good, but I wouldn't say it looks photo real or approaching photo real because some of the asset quality isn't there. And I think, yeah, this Unreal Engine 5, the combination of the factors is really going to take games. Yeah, you sort of need everything coming together. You can't just push lighting to crazy degrees and not bring everything else with it. And that's why, Unreal Engine 5 seems super interesting to me. Hopefully we see more games that sort of look like Flight Simulator, sort of one of the...
Or Minecraft.
Does Minecraft have really good...
I was just laughing because you were saying... There's a ray tracing version.
Well, all right.
Jay's 2 Cents just released a video about how overclocking the 7900 XTX reduces performance by decreasing VRAM clocks for stability. Any thoughts or insights you could add to the conversation? Are you able to replicate Jay's results? Haven't done too much of that testing yet, but I believe Jay only used the, what do they call it, the AMD Wattman, the Adrenalin software for overclocking. And I and some actual overclockers, which I am not, have found that to be largely buggy and a bit broken and do weird things. So I don't know if Jay explored alternative options for his video because I haven't watched it. I am aware of it, but I haven't watched it just due to time and whatnot. I would recommend trying some other software because I found the AMD software to be very janky and do weird things.
Should probably get on that and fix that, AMD, considering it is their product. But
well, yeah. So MSI Afterburner, though, I have successfully overclocked the memory to reasonable levels, and I know other overclockers have as well, and haven't seen performance going backwards because of stability, which I don't think is a thing anyway. That's generally not how overclocking works.
Sounds like a bug, yeah.
I think it's a bug. I think that one's probably easily ticked off as a bug. But again, I'm probably less in the know than Jay on this one because, as I said, I haven't done the testing yet. But my advice would be to try MSI Afterburner.
In your 7600X versus 5800X 3D video, you showed that the older Zen 3 part was bottlenecking the RTX 4090. That being the case, what level of GPU would you pair with the 5800X 3D for that sweet spot balance? Would we see the same bottleneck results with a 3090/Ti or 6950 XT, 6900 XT?
It's not that I don't want to start off on the wrong foot here. It's not that I don't like this question. It's just that this question you cannot answer correctly. Like there's no single.
Difficult.
Well, and let me tell you why. It's because basically gamers play games. Well, they play different types of games. Some of them play Assassin's Creed, and some of them play Fortnite. Some use low quality settings, and some use ultra quality settings, or tuned high quality settings. So basically, the games you play make a big difference. How you play those games, resolution, quality settings, all of that can lead to very different answers. So if you're playing Fortnite with RT lumens and all the visual eye candy turned up, then a 4090 at 4K, you're looking at like 60 FPS with that game maxed out. So a 5800X 3D can certainly throughput 60 FPS just fine in Fortnite. No dramas at all. It'll do a couple of 100 frames per second. So you're definitely not bottlenecked under those conditions. But if you're to play Fortnite with basically everything minned, like so post-processing off, extra effects off, all RT stuff off, draw distance epic, and that's about it. Maybe epic textures as well, because that doesn't really affect competitive stuff. You'll be getting 3, 4, up to 500 FPS with an RTX 4090 without a CPU limit. 5800X 3D may limit you there to about 250, maybe 300 FPS. So you are being CPU limited in that scenario. So as you can sort of see, the answer depends very much on the type of games, type of gamer, all those kind of things. So if you're playing your Cyberpunks, let's say without RT, because RT obviously hammers the frame rate right down, can increase CPU requirements, but it gets even more complicated there. But let's just say Cyberpunk on high to ultra, Assassin's Creed Odyssey, all those sort of things. Really, a 5800X 3D is going to be okay with a 4090 at 4K. 1440p, you will want a faster CPU if you're wanting faster, higher frame rates. Like, I think there was an example earlier given of F1 22. Like, how many frames do you need in F1 22 to enjoy it, even in a competitive setting? I'm sure 144 is fine. You're not doing flick shots.
Yeah.
You're not peaking your opponent. You just drive. Don't want to sound like it's simple. It's very difficult, but you're driving a car on a track. I don't think that requires more than 200 FPS. So again, people sort of hear CPU bottlenecking and think that's a horrible thing. It doesn't. If you mostly play Assassin's Creed Valhalla, Cyberpunk, and you're aiming for around whatever you can get, 100 frames per second or whatever, and then you are limited in F1 22 at 250 frames per second. That doesn't mean you need a new CPU. It just means that particular game, it's mostly CPU limited. That's the nature of the game.
Yeah, I don't think there's a lot of reason, especially if you can afford to do so, to sort of be looking at the 4090 and going, I'm going to be CPU bottlenecked a lot of the time. May as well drop down a tier, because it's so hard to even determine what situations you're going to run into that bottleneck. You may be playing Fortnite knowing that you're going to be CPU bottlenecked, but then future game comes out, you're really interested in that for maybe multiplayer, maybe single player, and suddenly you're not CPU bottlenecked on your 4090. And then if you're limiting yourself and sort of going, I'm just going to drop down a tier or drop down 2 tiers because I don't think my CPU is good enough, you may find that you're going to be GPU bottlenecked in some situations. That's kind of the difficulty, as you were saying, between all these different scenarios.
Yeah, I think the best answer is that this CPU GPU bottlenecking thing, generally speaking, only becomes an issue when we're talking about a really massive imbalance of those two components.
Yeah.
So take like a Zen 2 part or something like that and putting it with a 4090. Probably not a good idea. You'd want at least a Zen 3 part. Ideally, it'd want to be a 3D V-Cache part, which limits you to one CPU. Because the 4090 is just so brutally fast. And realistically, if you're not using it at 4K Ultra, you are going to run into CPU bottlenecks. But yeah, I think within reason, like a 5000X 3D is probably fine. Anything a lot slower than that, you probably don't want to put a $1,600 GPU with it, let's be honest.
Yeah.
Anyone with a Ryzen 5 2600 probably didn't spend $1,600 on their entire computer. So the conversation becomes a bit redundant at that point, a bit silly. So that's I think that's my take anyway.
Are you going to do a video testing the memory speed scaling of Raptor Lake above 6400 speeds? 7200 is possible on most Z790 boards. With XMP 8000 is already on sale. There are newer games like Spider-Man Remastered that seem to scale linearly with memory bandwidth. It could be an interesting look at the future of memory performance as JEDEC goes up to 7600 for DDR5. So, what are you doing?
Yes, I will be doing a Raptor Lake memory scaling video. I just need people to stop releasing products. Please stop doing that. No, but seriously, I wanted to do it. I've actually got a lot of the memory in to do just this test, but I'm swamped and massively backlogged on like Zen 4 memory stuff, Raptor Lake memory stuff, Z790 motherboards, B650 motherboards, so there's a lot going on and I just need a bit of a break. But as I said, we've got a lot of products coming up just in January that I already have on hand that we've got to test and that. So maybe late January, maybe February, I'm not sure. But yes, I will do it at some point, and I want to. And I've got all the stuff I need. So,
all right, and we're going to hit pause for a second time for part 2 of our questions because there's more questions to answer, I'd say, at this point. So it's probably going to require a part 3 on the channel as well. Yep. So I'm sure you guys won't complain. You always love the Q&As usually. So maybe this one though. It's just, but I guess thanks for watching throughout the entirety of this video. 20% Club, always appreciate the people that watch to the end.
MVPs.
The VPs. Do you say MVP?
MVPs.
Yeah. You'll be answering so many questions you need to whisper at this point. Patreon, Floatplane, BTS videos, monthly live streams, Discord chat, other bonuses that I forget about for you guys. If you do want to support the channel, we've got links below for that. And we'll save your voice. And I'm your host, Tim.
I'm your host, Steve.
We'll see you in the next one.